Coming up on Broncos Weekend, Denver looks to make it 5 in a row when they welcome the Cleveland Browns on Sunday.
There's still that race to improve and that race to get better. The 20 teams, let's say, that do that better will be rewarded.
When they've needed it, Russell Wilson has delivered, but the offense hopes to find the end zone more often.
You know, it's all about winning. It's about winning. It's about the opportunity to rise to the occasion every week.
And on defense, can the turnover machine continue to produce against rookie quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson?
You want to put pressure on him, make him feel it early throughout the game.
We'll have our keys to a Denver victory and a whole lot more coming up next on Broncos Weekend. Hello, and thank you for joining us here on Broncos Weekend. We hope that you had a terrific Thanksgiving. I am Phil Milani alongside the Hall of Famer, Steve Atwater, and Super Bowl 50 champ, Ryan Harris. I hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving as well. We are getting you ready for kickoff against the Browns, and our main story is just the way the Broncos have been winning these games, right down to the wire. Steve, what have you learned about this Broncos team through some of these hard-fought victories?
Well, this team is a resilient ball club. They're a resilient group of guys. They also believe in themselves. They believe in each other. They bought into this Sean Payton system and what Sean Payton is selling, and they can't be taken for granted. I mean, I know earlier in the season they had the loss to Miami. Everybody said, man, they lost by 70. What the heck, what are we doing? Now, everybody's like, hey, we're on board. They've proven a lot to a lot of people this year so far.
Well, and the way that resilience shows up in the NFL is you can have bad third downs and still win the game. You can take a sack when your defense gets you a turnover because you kick the field goal and understand it's 4 quarters. I mean, let's talk about Courtland Sutton, too. Talk about resilient.
Yes.
How about a guy who's fought back from injury to play his best football in 2 weeks in a row? That's the thing Steve and I know from the NFL. It's not can you do it once. Anybody can do it once in the NFL. Can you do it twice? And Courtland Sutton has been huge.
This time of year, you got to win some of these games. It's not perfect out there. It's a little ugly, but when it matters most, you're able to execute. It feels like all games in the NFL come down to just like a handful of plays, Steve.
You do have to win some of those games. Even some of the games you're not expected to win, you got to be able to pull them out because at the end, you never know what it's going to look like in terms of the playoff picture. So great job by the team. Again, hanging in there. Things were looking really bleak at one time, and I know some of the fans, because of past seasons, thought that the team was going to throw in the towel, but they haven't done that. They've shown up, they've practiced hard, and they've improved each and every week.
There are no such things as ugly W's. It doesn't exist,
right.
Especially in the NFL. And what you get more than anything in games like that as a player is you realize it's all down to willingness. Are you willing to overcome mistakes? Are you willing to say, hey, that was my fault, let's get it better next time? Are you willing to improve? And that is what happens in close games. That's what you learn in those close games. And Steve and I will tell you, I prefer winning games like that because you know so much about the resilience and willingness of your team versus the skill. It's easy to win when you get 7 touchdowns or you get 4 touchdowns of 20-plus yards. Yeah. But when you grind it out and win, you know you did your best and were willing more than the other team.
Yeah, that Super Bowl 50 team, you guys won a bunch of games that were just down to the wire.
I think we set the record for the most games won without an offensive touchdown. Not a record you want, but something that we were willing to do.
Yeah, and you're winning games. So the Broncos have a tough test in the Cleveland Browns coming up this Sunday. Here's what head coach Sean Payton had to say about the matchup.
They have an identity offensively, and it very much fits, how they're playing defensively. So, that formula of being able to run the ball well and play good defense, even though it's 2023, it still works, and they're doing it better than anyone.
Last week against the Vikings might have been an ugly victory. This week it might be even uglier because this Browns defense is the best defense in the league in terms of yards per game and passing yards per game. In terms of the pass, they're the best defense in the last 40 years against the pass. So, Steve, what's it going to take for this Broncos offense to get going?
Well, we got to find ways to stay on the field, whether that's running the ball, whether that's throwing screen passes. But we got to find a way to keep our defense off the field some. They can't be on the field as much as they've been on the field some games. And they got to be creative. They got to find ways to get guys open and get the balls in the hands of our playmakers.
I like, number one, limiting the penalties. That was a big issue, and it affects the red zone and third down, which, by the way, have an entire practice on third down and the red zone if you're the Broncos, because that's the biggest issue on offense. And also, to win third down, you got to be good on first and second down. And that's where the run game for the Broncos is going to be huge, because not only are you giving your defense time to rest and recover and learn, but you also got to put pressure on the Browns. They have not been in games, a lot of games this season, where they have to catch up. That defensive line can just rush the passer. You run the football, you're efficient in the red zone with touchdowns. It's going to be a very different game that the Browns are finding themselves in. And, oh, by the way, they're at a mile-high altitude. They're not going to be used to that either, coming from the lake of Cleveland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, an early lead might be big. And the game plan here with Russell Wilson, he's been really good with ball security. Yeah. He's been efficient. His completion percentage is really high. At some point, they're going to have to go down the field, though, a little bit.
Yeah, you got to go down the field, but I think that is a good characteristic of good football teams, is teams, when you need 3 or 4 yards, you can get it. You have plays dialed up to where they're high percentage passes, and the receivers are catching the passes. The offense, they're not jumping off sides. Everybody's on sides. You can get a solid 3 to 4 yards. Those short pass plays can be just as good as a run play. So we got to be good at that. But, yeah, I agree. You got to be able to get the ball down the field some. But, hey, chopping away at it, it works just as well.
Yeah.
And the Broncos have made some downfield plays specifically to win the game lately. I mean, whether it's Jerry Jeudy against Blitz Zero or whatever the plays are, I mean, they have been going downfield. So that's there. And what I love is that they don't bring it out right away. I know fans want to see fireworks. Yep. Hey, we all do too. And as an offense, you want to save your best plays for when you need them. And that's what the Broncos have done week in and week out now on this win streak, is save their best plays for the fourth quarter, and that's where you win football games.
Buttering up the defense, getting them primed.
Just like a turkey, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Russ after the game said you got to be patient with the defense like that. Maybe they do that again this week. Russ, a 106.7 passer rating last week. 7th game overall with a 100-plus passer rating. So see if he can keep it going this week against a very good Cleveland Browns team.
I think we're making our plays in crucial moments, and I think just staying on schedule. If that first down play is really critical, that we're not going backwards, and I think that's the big thing about the red zone, just going forward. And so I'm not worried about it. I think we got a really good team, down there. I think we can score some points. I think the best thing about it though is that there's room to improve, and I think that's where our mindset has to be is the incremental gains every week. We want to get better, especially as the season goes on.
Certainly a big focus will be on Myles Garrett. He had 2 sacks last week against the Steelers. That gives him 13 on the year to lead the NFL. For more, here's Denver 7's Troy Rank with our matchup of the game.
The Broncos are on a roll. They are aiming for their 5th straight victory for the first time since the 2015 season. That included a win over the Cleveland Browns. Can the Broncos duplicate it when they host Cleveland this weekend? The challenge is real. Cleveland has basically the best defense in football, and it's because of that man right there, Myles Garrett. He is strength. He is balance. He is length. You name it, he's got it. It's like running Von Miller through the Kinko's copy machine at 125%. He is just big and strong. A wrecking ball, if you will. The Goldman of sacks. He leads the NFL with 13 sacks. So how will the Broncos try to defend him? Number one for me, he needs to get chipped more than my windshield on I-25. You cannot leave guys on an island against him consistently, because he will hit the quarterback. He's got 23 quarterback hits, so it's not just sacks with Garrett. But Garrett Bowles, when you look at him, he's having a spectacular year, especially when you consider he's coming off a serious broken leg and ankle. Bowles, for me, is playing his best football since his All-Pro year of 2020. That was during COVID. We all know it was a little different, but Bowles has bounced back. He has been solid, ranks in the top 10 of most pass blocking metrics. Mike McGlinchey, we'll admit it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride here this first season. He's starting to settle down. He needs to play his best game. He doesn't have to be perfect. No one is in football. But the reality is with Garrett, You can't let him wreck the game. And that's where this Cleveland defense tries to hurt you. They will slow the game down. They will have 3 and outs, but you can't let Garrett get a strip sack like in the red zone or inside your own 20. That's where you see there with Pickett. It can completely change the complex of this game. And the problem is he's not easy to defend. Remember that eclipse we had a few months ago? You know what it didn't block out? That was Myles Garrett. So you've got to have a plan for him. Javonte Williams in pass pro. Samaje Perine in pass pro. Account for him. Know where he is every play. Because if you're going to beat Cleveland, you have got to win against Garrett and keep him from being a wrecking ball. And I think Denver can do it. They're playing their best football. They've had their best plan. And they are due for an offensive explosion in terms of dynamic plays. They run the football. That will slow down Garrett. And the Broncos will get their 5th straight win.
It's time for us to take our first break here on Broncos Weekend. When we come back, we'll go inside the locker room with the man they call Jaquan McMillian. Plus, we offer up some bold predictions. That's next on Broncos Weekend.
Ric Flair always said, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And if we can do that up front and we can have, answer the bell with this challenge, it'd be a great step forward for us. But we're just worried about improving.
Shotgun time. Plummer takes a snap again, the 4-man rush. Pressure. Jake steps up. Now throws deep. He wants Lally. Ashley makes the catch. 45 yards on the catch by Lally, and it was a dandy.
Our memorable matchup is from 2003. The Broncos picked up their 9th win of that season with a 23-20 win over the Browns in overtime. That was Jake Plummer's first comeback in a Broncos uniform. And of course, we did not forget about the drive or the fumble. Our key stat this week, the Broncos and Browns met in 3 AFC championships from 1986 to 1989, with Denver winning all 3. The same 2 teams have not met in the AFC championship game more than 3 times, although the Steelers and Raiders did it 3 in a row back in the 70s. Hello, we're back here on Broncos Weekend. I'm Phil Milani alongside Steve Atwater and Ryan Harris. These 2 teams used to be pretty good rivals.
Huge rival.
Oh, man, in the 80s.
Yeah, especially in the 80s, early 90s. Yeah, it was a big-time rival.
Yeah, I mean, meaning 3 times there in such a short period in the championship game. Super Bowl's on the line. These 2 teams that did not like each other. The big matchup here on Sunday. Let's get some bold predictions.
My bold prediction is the defense is going to continue its defensive dominance. 3 turnovers, including another interception to put in the holster for Justin Simmons.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
Justin Simmons has been playing phenomenal for the Broncos. I got the Broncos winning. That's my first prediction. I mean, the Browns are a fantastic team in the AFC, and they will be the next fantastic team in the AFC to catch an L from the Broncos.
Yeah,
I also like Marvin Mims for a return touchdown in this game. He's been getting so close. I think he breaks one out against the Browns.
Yeah, he's such a dynamic player. Anytime the ball's in his hands, you think something great's going to happen.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're first in return yards in both punt and kickoff returns.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll talk special teams a little bit later on in the show, but that's a good bold prediction there. Let's go inside the Broncos locker room. A guy who has been on an absolute tear, just like Justin Simmons, is Jaquan McMillian. He's with Sidney Jones inside the Broncos locker room.
Thanks, Phil. We're inside the locker room here with cornerback Jaquan McMillian. Jaquan, got to talk about this defense to start. 12 takeaways in the past 3 games. What's been key for you guys there, and how do you want to continue that moving forward?
Just the details. We all locked in, just trying to do all our jobs. Everybody do their job and just play hard. And just try to attack the ball.
4 of those takeaways have been yours in the past 3 games. So what has it meant to just contribute to this team in that way?
It means a lot. I just try my best to do my job, and it means a lot to me to be able to make plays for my teammates. Those are my guys, and it just feels great.
J-Mac, I know you said earlier in the week that you play, really 3 positions here, of course, cornerback, and then a little bit of safety and linebacker. So, what about your game makes you so versatile?
I think the physicality, I can cover. I'm quick in small areas. I do a good job protecting the ball found me, and just doing my job. And reading my keys right, just reading my keys out and just doing what the coaches ask of me and just being in the right spot.
Do you feel like you kind of have a chip on your shoulder right now with the way that you're playing?
Of course. Been undrafted and been on practice squad all year last year. I definitely play with that chip on my shoulder. So going out there, I just think about all that, and it kind of helped me play better.
Yeah, Justin was just over here talking to you. How has some of the veterans in the secondary really helped you this season?
Oh yeah, they take care of me. I ask those guys questions and no problem. They answer with no problem. If they see something that they don't like with me, they'll tell me or they'll correct me. If they want me a certain way, like leverage, or if I know I got help coming from them, they'll tell me like, hey, J-Mac, you just sit on here, or just communicating with me and just trying to take care of me.
Last one, looking ahead, what have you seen from this Browns offense on tape that you guys are going to need to be aware of?
I think one emphasis that we are focusing on, obviously they run the ball really, really good. So that's one thing we need to do is stop the run, and then everything else will take care of itself.
Jaquan, appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Phil, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you very much, Sydney. For the second week in a row, guys, the Broncos are going up against a pretty inexperienced quarterback, but Dorian Thompson-Robinson, this is a guy who can really hurt you.
Yeah, I believe so. And last week I was surprised at how well Joshua Dobbs did. I thought that, hey, the clock was up. The clock struck 12, and it was about time for him to, start playing poorly. But he came out and played a nice game. And the same thing with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. We got to prepare for him like he's Tom Brady, right? We got to make sure that we're prepared for him and that we don't take him lightly. We don't want to take anything for granted.
And it starts defensively with covering everyone else. The tight end position has to be covered. They have some great tight ends at the Browns. And at the same time, Dorian Thompson-Robinson has not seen a defense like the Broncos. Where are you going to throw the football? Patrick Surtain's sitting there. Justin Simmons is watching you from the beginning of the snap. And oh, by the way, the best way to rattle a young quarterback is to hit him early and often. Yes. So if you are the defense, Cooper, Nick Bonito, Baron Browning, that's where you really affect him in the pass game.
And maybe force them to throw the ball a little bit to take away that running game, Browns running game third in the NFL. So force him to throw the ball and maybe more turnovers, Steve, like you mentioned.
Yeah. I think the interceptions are coming. They've been plentiful this year, and we got to keep them rolling.
All right, well, it's time for us to take our final break here. When we return after a 5-field-goal game, we'll give Will Lutz some love, and we'll also have our keys to the game. That's next on Broncos Weekend.
Cleveland is a great team, 7-3, so we just got to focus on this week, focus on all our execution, and just be better than we was previous game.
We at the Boys and Girls Club and just hanging out with some of the kids for Thanksgiving, enjoying some dinner, making some cookies, and just having fun, shooting hoops, just getting to know a bunch of the kids.
The Broncos spent some time out in the community ahead of Thanksgiving this week at the Broncos Boys and Girls Club. We're back here on Broncos Weekend. Last week against the Vikings, the Broncos needed every single one of their points. 15 came from the leg of unsung hero Will Lutz. For more, here's Sydney Jones with our Fantasy Focus.
Thanks, Phil. For this week's Fantasy Focus, let's take a look at kicker Will Lutz. So far this season, he's made 22 of his 24 field goal attempts, which is a 92% success rate. In Sunday night's win over the Vikings, Lutz was heavily involved, having made all 5 of his field goal attempts, which accounted for 15 of the Broncos' 21 points. Now looking at his fantasy production, he finished Sunday's game with 17 points in PPR leagues, and in 3 of the Broncos' last 4 wins, Lutz has put up 15 fantasy points or more. In terms of this weekend's matchup versus the Browns, it'll be another tough challenge for this Broncos offense, as Cleveland's defense ranks first in both net yards allowed per game and passing yards allowed per game. So they could end up relying heavily on Lutz again. He'll look to carry his momentum over to this weekend, which is why I think it'd be smart to start him in your lineup.
Thank you very much, Sydney. Let's talk about special teams a little bit. We don't really necessarily talk about that part of the game all that often, Steve. That's been a focus from last year to this year.
Yeah, and special teams have taken a huge jump. The kicker has been exceptional.
Yes.
He's made the clutch kicks when we needed them, scoring points, the 3 points, they add up, they stack and stack and stack. Our coverage teams have been exceptional. We haven't given up any large returns from other teams. And then our return game, man, Marvin Mims been securing the ball, securing the punts, securing the kickoffs, making nice returns, and got a touchdown out of it so far. 1 touchdown so far. I think there's more to come, but they've been really, really good, and they've made a big jump from last year.
And I love too about Will Lutz's story, how he had to battle through adversity early in this season, coming over late and everything, and right before the season started, missing a kick in the first couple of games, and then being who he is and who Coach Sean Payton believed he was going to be for this team. Also, Riley Dixon's been really changing the field with some punts outside of one against the Vikings. That's a big piece of this too. Flipping the field, even when your offense does not, find or convert on that third down, that first down, Riley Dixon's been able to pin defenses deep in their own territory, and that's been a huge part of the success as well.
Yeah, and especially in these close games, flipping the field, that really plays a big factor. And certainly against the Bills, the Broncos, so many of their drives started right around midfield. So a big deal in trying to win some of these close games for the Broncos. Okay, time for some keys to victory. Steve, let's start with you.
One, we said it earlier, we got to contain Myles Garrett. We got to make sure that he doesn't just come in and wreck the ball game. And defensively, we got to continue making turnovers. Again, I predicted 3 turnovers, but we got to get at least 2 turnovers to make sure that we win this game.
Number one for me starts with stopping the run. The Minnesota Vikings were extremely successful at one point, more than 4 times as many rushing yards as the Broncos in that game. The Broncos defense has to stop the run. That's the best friend of a young quarterback. So if they can stop the run, DTR is going to have to put a lot on his shoulders and arm. And then offensively, convert on third down. That is going to be the end of many of the woes that the Broncos are facing. They went 2 for 12, if I remember correctly, against the Vikings. You can't win football games that way. You got to get up to that 6 of 12 range. And if the Broncos can convert on third down, which means a good first and second down, this is going to be a walk in the park for the Broncos.
Peyton Manning used to always say, like, first down, second down, first down.
That's rhythm.
Yeah. Keep it going that way. And hey, it's fun talking about this team now. 5-5, they're in the hunt.
Totally different vibe.
Each one of these games gets a little bit bigger as the season goes on. So this is a huge one against the Browns. The Broncos 11-4 all time against Cleveland at home. So history is on their
side. Keep it going. Keep it rolling, baby.
Keep it rolling. All right, that's going to do it for us. Our thanks to Troy Rank and Sidney Jones. I am Phil Milani alongside the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater and Super Bowl 50 champ Ryan Harris. Thank you so much for watching Broncos Weekend.